At a neighborhood cookout last summer, Gloria and Sam got to talking with the Whitfields about retirement, the way people in their 60s eventually do. Somewhere between the potato salad and the second round of lemonade, the numbers came out. Both couples had saved almost the exact same amount, $850,000, give or take a few thousand. Both were 62. Both wanted the same modest, comfortable lifestyle once they stopped working. A year into retirement, Gloria noticed something odd. The Whitfields seemed to have more breathing room. Not a flashier lifestyle, just more slack. An extra weekend trip here, a nicer birthday gift there, without ever seeming to worry about it. Gloria and Sam were living the same life on paper, but it felt tighter every month. Her first guess was that the Whitfields were quietly spending less than they let on. Or maybe they had some income source nobody had mentioned. Sam had a slightly different theory. Maybe the Whitfields had simply gotten luckier with their investments over the years, picked better funds, timed something right that Gloria and Sam somehow hadn't. Neither guess turned out to be true. When Gloria finally asked outright over coffee a few weeks later, the answer surprised her. The real difference had nothing to do with how much either couple had saved or how well they'd invested it, and everything to do with where that money was sitting. Today we're going to walk through exactly what that means, using two households with identical balances, and show you why the account type your money lives in can matter just as much as the number on the statement. By the end, you'll have a simple way to check your own mix and a realistic plan for what to do about it if it turns out to need adjusting. I'm Helen. This is general education, not personalized tax or financial advice. Tax rules around retirement accounts are genuinely complicated, vary by state, and change over time. So please work through your specific situation with a qualified tax professional or financial advisor before making any moves. Let's start with the three basic places retirement money typically ends up living, since almost every household's savings fall into one of these three categories, even if nobody ever calls them by these names. There's the pre-tax bucket, things like a traditional 401k or IRA, where you got a tax break going in, but every dollar you take out in retirement gets taxed as ordinary income. There's the Roth bucket, where you paid tax on the money before it went in. And now, decades later, it comes out completely tax-free. And there's the taxable bucket, ordinary brokerage accounts, where you only owe tax on the growth, often at lower capital gains rates, not on the whole withdrawal. Gloria and Sam did almost everything right for 40 years. They maxed out Sam's 401k every year without fail, treated the automatic paycheck deduction like a bill that had to be paid, and never touched it even during a rough stretch when Gloria was between jobs. The result? $800,000 of their $850,000 sat in pre-tax accounts, with only $50,000 in a small Roth account from a few good years early in Sam's career. It looked like a triumph of discipline, and in the real sense, it was. But it also meant that nearly every dollar they'd eventually spend in retirement would first pass through the IRS on its way to their checking account. The Whitfields had saved the same total amount, but a different mix. $500,000 pre-tax, $200,000 in a Roth they'd built steadily since their 40s, and $150,000 in an ordinary taxable brokerage account. Same discipline, same total number, just spread across three buckets instead of concentrated in one. Here's where the gap actually shows up. Both couples wanted about $5,500 a month to live on. For Gloria and Sam, pulling that much almost entirely from a pre-tax account meant the withdrawal itself was taxed as ordinary income, on top of whatever else counted as income that year. To actually land on $5,500 spendable dollars, they had to withdraw more than that, essentially handing a chunk of every withdrawal straight to taxes, before they ever saw it. The Whitfields could do something Gloria and Sam simply couldn't. In a year when they needed a little extra for a big house repair or a family trip, they could pull that portion from the Roth account instead, tax-free, without pushing themselves into a higher bracket or triggering extra tax on their Social Security. In an ordinary, uneventful year, they draw mostly from the taxable brokerage, paying tax only on the growth portion at a lower rate, and leave the Roth alone to keep growing. The pre-tax account sat there in the background, used sparingly and deliberately, mostly in years when their other income happened to be lower anyway. It wasn't a complicated system. It was really just 3 separate spigots and the freedom to choose which one to turn on depending on the year. Run the math across a full year, and the Whitfields ended up with real, spendable money that was several $100s a month higher than Gloria and Sam's, from the exact same starting balance. Same discipline, same total number. A meaningfully different result purely because of where the money had been sitting all along. Stretch that gap across 20 or 25 years of retirement, and it stops being pocket change. It becomes the difference between a trip taken and a trip postponed, a grandchild's tuition gift given freely and one given with a wince, a retirement that feels like it has some give in it, and one that feels like it's being managed down to the dollar every single month. That's the first half of the story, and it would be easy to walk away thinking Roth accounts are simply better, and pre-tax accounts were a mistake. That's not quite right. And it's worth slowing down here. Pre-tax accounts aren't a mistake. The tax deduction Sam got every year he contributed was real money, often invested and compounded for decades. For many working households, especially those in a high tax bracket during their career, leaning on pre-tax savings is exactly the right call at the time. The problem isn't that Gloria and Sam saved in a 401k. The problem is that they never revisited the mix once retirement got close. So almost everything ended up in one bucket, with no flexibility left to work with later. There's also a real cost to building a bigger Roth or taxable bucket earlier. You're paying tax sooner out of current income instead of later. That's a genuine trade-off, not a free lunch. The Whitfields didn't get their flexibility for nothing. They paid for a portion of it years earlier, a little at a time, back when their paychecks could absorb it more easily than a fixed retirement income ever could. In some years, that meant a slightly smaller take-home paycheck than Gloria and Sam had. Nobody handed the Whitfields their flexibility. They bought it in small installments, long before they needed it, without necessarily knowing exactly how it would pay off decades later. So here's the part that actually matters for anyone watching this who, like Gloria and Sam, finds most of their savings sitting in one place. You are not stuck with the mix you have today. The years between when you stop working and when Social Security and required withdrawals begin are often the lowest income years of your entire life. That narrow window is frequently the best opportunity to convert a slice of pre-tax savings into a Roth account, paying tax on that slice now, while your income, and often your tax bracket, is unusually low. Do this every year in modest amounts during that window, and the lopsided pre-tax pile can gradually turn into something that looks more like the Whitfields mix a few years down the road. This isn't a decision to make once and forget. It's worth checking every year, especially in the years right around retirement, because your income, the tax law, and your own spending needs all shift over time. A conversion amount that made sense the year you retired might be too aggressive or too timid just 2 or 3 years later, once Social Security has started or a part-time consulting project has changed your income picture. Here's a simple check you can run on your own accounts this week with nothing more than a pen, a calculator, and your last few statements. Add up what you have in each of the 3 buckets: pre-tax, Roth, and taxable. Look at the percentages, not just the raw total. If one bucket holds nearly everything, that's not automatically wrong, but it does mean you have less flexibility than a more even mix would give you, especially in the specific years when flexibility matters most. A big unplanned expense, a year you want to spend more, or a year you're trying to keep your income under a certain threshold. Gloria and Sam didn't redo their whole plan overnight, and they didn't try to catch up to the Whitfields in a single year, which would have meant a tax bill large enough to defeat the whole purpose. Instead, they started something the Whitfields had quietly been doing for years without ever explaining it at a cookout. A small, deliberate Roth conversion each year during that low-income window before Social Security began. Nothing dramatic, just enough every year to slowly rebuild the flexibility that 4 decades of maxing out one account hadn't left room for. Sam joked that it felt strange, on purpose, to write a check to the IRS in a year they didn't technically have to. But he'd started thinking of it less as paying tax early and more as buying back a little bit of choice for the years ahead. Your retirement balance answers one question: how much have you saved? It was never designed to answer the other question that actually determines your monthly life. How much of that money is truly yours to spend, freely, in the year you need it most? Those are two different numbers, and only one of them shows up on your statement. The other one only shows up gradually, month after month, in the quiet difference between a retirement that feels tight and one that has a little give in it. If you've ever compared notes with a friend or neighbor who has a similar balance, but somehow seems to have more room to breathe every month, this might be why. Tell us about it in the comments below, and subscribe to Quiet Wealth After 50 for more honest, practical conversations about money, independence, and peace of mind after 50.